Last year, our staff development throughout the year was on the engaged classroom. And based on my observations, you all had significant improvement in getting your students more active and engaged in class. But one area which still seems to need some work is the effective use of questions in class. So we're going to consider this during our pre-planning session. To prepare for that, I have 3 short videos which give some basic principles. I would ask that you watch these sometime before our time together Wednesday afternoon, and then we'll build on those in that session. So first, let's think about the purposes for questions. Why do we ask the students questions? Well, one purpose for questions is formative assessment. Formative assessment means that you're finding out what the students know and don't know, and then making decisions about what you should give further instruction on. Now, formative assessment, by the way, is contrasted with summative assessment, which is usually the end of unit test or something which gets somewhat of a final grade. Formative assessment is done so you can change or modify your instruction as needed. So you need to know, for example, whether Johnny understands how to find a linking verb in a sentence, so you can decide if he needs more help with that. Or you need to find out if your class really knows the order of events in the 6 days of creation. If they're confused, then you can reteach it. This is an important reason to ask questions. This is for your benefit to guide your instruction. By the way, when students answer this type of question, it also helps them, because the process of thinking about and formulating the answer actually cements the information in their brain better. So, formative assessment, one purpose for asking questions. Another important use of questions is to challenge the thinking of the students. You want them to move beyond the obvious answers to thinking more deeply about the material. Or maybe you want to think about contradictions to ideas they already have. So, for example, you give Johnny the 2 sentences, Mary felt sick yesterday, and Mary felt the soft fur on the cat. Then ask him in which sentence felt is a linking verb, and ask him what's different about them. In Bible class, you might ask the students, okay, Genesis 1 says God made man and woman on the 6th day, but Genesis 2 says God made man, then made the woman later. How do those two go together? You see, you want your students to dig deeper into the content than just giving easy, rote answers. So you ask them questions to make them think more. You want to challenge them to think. Sometimes you want to challenge what they already believe by asking them questions to get them to think more. So challenging their thinking is a second important use of questions. Finally, you can ask questions as a form of class management. The idea here is you want to get all your students paying attention. So you call out questions to the class as a whole, and you want the class as a whole to call out the answers. If you see some students not answering, you'll fuss at them for not paying attention. Now, while you might be able to figure out if the class as a whole understands the formative assessment approach, really you're just hearing the most vocal students. And this is not what you use to make them think more deeply about the topic. When it comes down to it, you're just asking questions to keep the students from misbehaving. Now, I'm going to encourage you to avoid doing this. As I said, it really doesn't help you know whether the class understands the material. And you certainly can't tell if particular students understand. If everybody is answering, you don't know what Johnny understands. You don't know what Mary understands. And really, you're not getting this, and you're certainly not getting the students to think more deeply. What typically happens in this is that a few vocal students speak out loudly. The others just kind of murmur something or just go along. Or maybe you have a few class clowns who call out silly answers and get the class distracted. This really doesn't help at all. Now, there are specific times when you will use these class choral recitations. Times like if you're going over a memory verse, you want the whole class to answer, and it helps them. Sometimes you do it with math facts where you're holding up flashcards and they're just saying the answers. Even there, you need to be careful because you don't know who's getting it right or not. You can tell if the class as a whole is confused, but it doesn't give you a whole lot of information. But sometimes you do that just to keep reviewing the material. So think about this and be judicious when you're asking questions and just asking the class as a whole to respond. So we have three main uses for questions: formative assessment, challenging student thinking, and class management, which you should mostly avoid. In our next video, we're going to look at your procedures for calling on students and ways that can be more effective.